Welcome to another episode of the Soul Centered Attorney Podcast, where we go over the good, the bad, and the ugly about starting and running your own law firm. Today we have Mart Harris. He is an attorney out of Pittsburgh. He practices civil rights and criminal defense law. He is one of the most efficient and tactical trial attorneys that I know. Uh, he is a graduate of the Trial Lawyers College, and he has been running his own law firm since 2016. Please enjoy my conversation with Mart Harris. Mr. Mart Harris.
There were no misters. I've known you way too long for that, and for the record, 5 minutes is way too long.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, let's keep the conversation going, man. We touched base a little bit before this, but I wanted to hear more about pickleball.
Okay, so what do you want to know? I mean, it's awesome. It's fun. There's cardio. It's competition. Assuming that people are cool, you can make friends with them. Some people suck, and so you try to hit them with the ball. What else is there?
Gotcha. Well, actually, yeah. Let's talk about you. You mentioned you have a tournament this weekend, right?
Yeah. So Friday and Saturday so on Friday I'm in a tournament where one player has to be older than 50 and the other player has to be younger than 50. And then Saturday I'm in a tournament where just two guys that play against other two-guy teams. But there's no age restriction on it. It's more of a skill level restriction. And so so I technically have two tournaments coming up.
Nice. And what's the strategy for like, let's start with the Friday one. Like, so do you have a strategy with your teammate, or like how do you approach it?
So my strategy is to hit the ball over the net, but not too far over the net, and just keep doing that. And that's basically as much as I strategize.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And you've been doing it. So you were very specific about 55 weeks or wait.
It's been 50 weeks and 5 days.
And why are you keeping such good track?
I wasn't keeping such good track. I just know the first day I started was St. Patrick's last year. So,
Gotcha.
like, all right, so that's coming up. It was actually on the 17th, and since it's the 8th, I think I even calculated it wrong. But on the 17th, it'll be 1 year.
Nice. And what prompted you to start?
So last February, I assume you know this, like 2 Novembers ago, I got super, 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 super sick, and I almost died, and I was in the hospital. Everything sucked. And then last February, a trial was coming up, and my buddy Duran in India, or not in Indiana, I was supposed to do the trial with him. It's like, I'm technically not back to work yet, but yeah, I'm going to come do the trial because we had been working the case for a while. We like the client, and I love hanging out with Duran. And so the trial was about an hour or so north of Indianapolis. So I was flying into Indianapolis. And he said that ordinarily he'll pick me up from the airport and then we'll just drive up to where he lived at that time. But this time he said that his brother was going to be picking me up from the airport because he lived in Indianapolis, and that he would be coming down later for a pickleball tournament. I'm just like, the hell, what is pickleball? That sounds dumb. And so I watched a little bit of that tournament and was like, okay, this looks like it could be perhaps fun. And so keep in mind, I'm recovering from double lung pneumonia. I haven't really moved my body in maybe 2.5, 3 months. And so he takes me to some pickleball courts and we hit the ball around a little bit. And I'm thinking back to myself, it's like, I remember in 12th grade, or it was the summer between 11th and 12th grade. me and my buddy Eric went down to Washington D.C. With his mom to visit one of her friends, and she took us to a tennis court, and I had like lots of fun hitting the tennis ball around. And she, I was somewhat good at it, even though I've never played it before, and then it just sort of fell off and I stopped playing. And so when I was back there last February, knocking the pickleball around, it's like, I remember how much fun it is to, hit balls over nets. And so as soon as it was still like really down and out for like another month. So then I found that there was this facility about 8 minutes away from my house that had pickleball. So I went down there one Sunday afternoon, and the rest is history, as they say. Now I play like 4 hours a day.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think well yeah, I did know I did hear about when you were kind of recovering and I didn't know pickleball was something that some one of the good things that came out of it after sure you got better. Um
Oh yeah. Pickleball wasn't necessarily related to being sick, because I still would have been in Indianapolis. I still would have watched that tournament, and you know, I still would have been introduced to pickleball regardless of being sick. If anything, it prevented me from starting to play sooner.
Gotcha. Any as far as so you've been practicing as a trial attorney for a while now, and we'll get into that. But any similarities between pickleball and practicing law?
Gosh, are there? For me, a little bit, because I do both things very reactively. Um, so a shot's coming at me, I hit the shot. If a case comes at me, I take the case. If there's an issue that arises, I deal with the issue. But I don't really do much in the way of planning out things or wargaming or asking a bunch of what if questions, like what if the other attorney does this, what if the other attorney does that. For me, that's just wasted energy that I could be used sort of just existing. And then once the other attorney does something, I know what the other attorney did, and then I can react to that. And so it's sort of the same for me with pickleball. I don't think about what the next shot is going to look like. I wait for that next shot and then I hit it back. Or at least my idea is to hit it back. Sometimes I hit it into the net and sometimes I hit it way out of bounds. But I know what I want to do, which is, hit it back over the net, but not too far.
Dude, that's actually super deep, actually. I mean, you know, I sometimes lose sleep thinking about, you know, other like the opposing attorney yelling at me during our meeting confers and threatening to do all these motions and what you just described is like just just do what's in front of you, right?
Yeah. So sort of like the theme in my head is actually on the back of the t-shirts that I had made for my law firm. The back of my t-shirts say, opinions are like assholes, don't speculate. And
Hmm.
the entire idea is that you can speculate about things and stress about them, but until you know nothing, until you know what's happening, nothing really matters about it, and it's not real yet. Maybe it's more like Schrodinger's cat or something, but that's just sort of the philosophy I've taken with everything in my life. Until something happens, it's only theoretical. It's not yet real, and so it doesn't really matter.
Mm. That's awesome, man. That's um, yeah, I'm trying to get better about yeah, exactly. Actually dealing with what has happened instead of living in the future and anxiety of what is could happen. So that's kind of deep, man. Pickleball. To be honest, I've heard people play pickleball and um and that it's getting very popular. And I'm still not sure, like, what does the ball look like? I'm not I'm kind of ignorant when it comes to pickleball.
It looks like a green wiffle ball.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Instead of slits like a wiffle ball, it's just circular holes. Uh,
Okay.
Depending if it's an inside ball or an outside ball, there's either like 24 holes or 40 holes. 40 holes for outside, 24, I think, for inside, and the inside holes are a little bit bigger. But otherwise, it's the same. It's like I haven't played wiffle ball in a really long time, but I'm pretty sure it's like the same sort of hard plastic that a wiffle ball is, with some holes in it, and it is maybe just slightly bigger than a tennis ball.
And then is it always played in teams, or can you play solos, or?
So you can play solos. I don't at this juncture have the uh, cardiac, not cardiac capacity, or maybe it is cardiovascular. I can't run around the court, the whole court, the way that you have to do to play singles pickleball. Um, so I played singles like once or twice. Like I'm dying. So I've been keeping the doubles, which is you still get you run, you do little bursts, and you do hand battles. And since the court is so much smaller than a tennis court, um, when it's you and the person on the other side of you, like up at the front of the net, you're just whacking the ball back and forth at each other super fast. It really, on some level, reminds me of the knife fighting that I do. And so it's just with a paddle instead of a knife, but just going back and forth really fast and it's really fun. And so when I'm doing it in my mind, I think of it as like sword fighting on Game of Thrones because you hear the sound of swing, you hear the sound, swing back, you hear the sound, um, and so I don't know. I just have all sorts of really random and weird things run through my head as I'm doing anything. But those are the weird random thoughts for when I'm playing pickleball. Is knife fighting, Game of Thrones, and trying not to have the ball hit you in the eye because that really hurts.
Man, that sounds actually super cool. That like like swinging it like a knife. I mean, uh, I'm gonna have to check out with pickleball, man. That sounds awesome. Super
Yeah,
cool.
I'm sure that every 8 to 10 feet in San Diego, you can find a pickleball court. So I suggest that you do that, later today.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool. Um, as far as we'll keep going on non-law related things.
Whatever, Mike.
Freckles. What was that?
Yeah, I just go with the flow. I don't care what we talk about.
All right, cool.
Spend this entire time not talking about law, and I would think that's great.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's talk about Freckles. How's Freckles doing?
So he continues to rule my life, which is exactly what I want him to do because he's just super super adorable, and I have no self control. Um, I I structure my life around the things that he tells me that he wants, and so there's really not much more to say. He wants his apricot at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the dot, or he literally starts shaking, like going into withdrawal, like a meth addict or something. Um, he wants his, 5 feedings a day: his breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack one, and snack two. Um, he, when it snows, he requires us to go out onto the deck and make him snowballs to eat. When it doesn't snow, he likes ice from Chick-fil-A. Um, and then that he encourages us, but we don't always do it. But he really likes it. So we'll put the Chick-fil-A ice into the snow machine to make him snowball. Um, we, he rules everything that we do, and we're okay with it because he's adorable.
Yeah, he sounds like a powerful being. Well, what's his pedigree?
He is Beagle, Poodle, Dachshund, and American Staffordshire Terrier. Yes, we do.
Nice. That's awesome. And then does he? I don't think does he. He doesn't like to go on walks. I don't think you described walks.
So he does. He likes to go on walks. He doesn't like seeing other dogs on walks, and he doesn't like other people and their dogs existing, or cats or children. And so he goes on walks, but they're fights.
Oh, I gotcha.
He wants to run off and do his things. Like, no, you'll get hit by a car or something, and that's not acceptable. So you have to stay on your leash. And he pulls and he growls and he complains and he whines. But eventually we get it done like 4 to 5 times a day.
Oh, he does. Okay, so he does go on a lot of walks.
Oh yeah, he does a
Okay.
lot. He doesn't like spending a lot of time in the car. My guess is because when he was 3, he got really sick, and so we were at vets all of the time. And every time he got in the car, it was go to the vet. And so I think that's why he doesn't like car rides anymore. We try to go on car rides, but it's not something that he enjoys, which sort of truncates the radius of places that we can go together.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Cool, man. Cool. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about before you went to law school. I don't think I've ever asked you about this, man. What so I think you were in the army, right?
I was in the army before law school. Yes.
So okay, yeah, so what happened that you decided to go to law school?
Oh boy. Okay. I'm glad we have 90 minutes. So it started in phases. Phase one, I am about 8.5 years old. Um, I play like little league football or whatever, the pee wee football or whatever it's called, and we're about halfway through the season. And my football coach decides you're going to play center, as opposed to, I don't even know what I was doing before that, but I knew that for some reason they were training 8.5-year-old me to play center. And it's like halfway through the season, and it's the first game that I'm playing center, and apparently I'm super, super good at it. And so my parents are super happy, especially my dad, who is obsessed with football. And um, I get to go to Chuck E. Cheese as a reward. And at Chuck E. Cheese, I fall and break my arm. And it hurts a lot. It sucked. And the arm's like hanging all gross and dangly, and just everything was terrible. And so me and my mom are at the hospital, and I am high as a kite. I don't know it because I'm only 8, but apparently they gave me like really good drugs. And so I'm super high, and I have no idea why I asked this. But I said, "Mommy, do we have a lawyer?" And I'm not even sure I knew what a lawyer was at that point. But she said, "Yeah, why? Do you want to sue?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't know what suing was. Um, but so ended up suing Chuck E. Cheese over the broken arm. So then we fast forward about 3 or so years. I'm 11. And I read a book called Class 29 by this guy named John Carl Rote. He was in the first class of Navy SEAL trainees that were actually called Navy SEALs as opposed to frogmen when the concept that became Navy SEALs was invented in World War II. They were called frogmen. So this is the first time that the frogmen were officially recognized as Navy SEAls. So I'm reading the book about, sort of his training and stuff as becoming a Navy SEAL and then doing Navy SEAL type stuff. And there's a line in the book that says, war is about breaking things and killing people. And if you need something broken or you need something killed, that's what the Navy SEALs exist for. And I'm an 11-year-old boy. I was like, oh, that's badass. That's cool. That's just like super fun existence that, I want that to be like my entire persona because I'm 11 years old and 11-year-old boys are dumb. And so a little bit after I read that book, I'm at my aunt's house and I distinctly remember this. I'm in her finished basement, hanging out with my cousin, and I'm walking up the stairs to get like a Kool-Aid or something. I'm walking up the steps in the basement, and she comes like sort of stands in the doorway, and she looks at me and is like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And immediately, no hesitation whatsoever, I say, "I want to be an assassin." And then she gives me like the most weirdest, I'm going to call 911 and get you out of my house and into a mental hospital as soon as possible look. And I see this look on her face, like, that was the wrong answer. And so, like, we're like, for a lawyer. And he's like, okay, that's much better. And so that was phase two of, getting to the point of becoming a lawyer. And so I knew a couple of things about myself at this point. I knew that I was lazy. I knew that I did not like running. Sorry, Fabian. I knew that I didn't really like being uncomfortable in any way whatsoever. I don't like being too hot. I don't like being too cold. I don't like being too tired. I don't like, doing things that are repetitive. All of the things that you would tell yourself, okay, this is the absolute last person that would ever be in the military. That was me. And I knew this about myself. And so in high school, I'm, on the forensics, the debate team, and, very academic, very minimal sports. I had played baseball through, middle school and junior high. I was super good at baseball. I liked playing baseball, but the reason I liked playing baseball is that I had figured out roughly fifth grade or so that baseball's not repetitive and boring if you play catcher. So instead of standing around waiting for something to happen, every single play you're in the game. And so I said to myself, I said, Coach, Coach, can I play catcher? And I was good at it, and on my team at least, we were sort of like battlefield general, playing catcher, so sort of directing the entirety of the defense, and so that was engaging and fun for me. And then ninth grade, I try out for the baseball team. I make the baseball team. Everyone's like, "Oh, this kid's so good!" Yeah, and I'm just like, "Wait, what is this? What is this lifting thing? You expect me to go to the weight room and lift weights, not even play baseball? What? No, I'm not doing that." So I, instead just focused entirely on the debate team. Graduate high school, and it's like, okay, well, obviously I'm, gonna go to law school. I took some law classes in high school and so forth and so on. So I was gonna go to college and go to law school, like, any regular person that decides to be a lawyer generally thinks of doing. So then, after my first semester of college, I'm just like, A, I don't like math class. B, I went to an all boys school, so I didn't really have a lot of interactions with girls. So when I finally got to college and there were girls around, I just lost my fucking mind. And so I was like, I need some drastic change. And so I went into a recruiting office and was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Let's go to the Army. And you have to do various tests and stuff to, what are you going to do in the Army? Are you like a moron who, can't walk and chew gum at the same time and forget that you're not supposed to eat the crayons? Or are you somebody that can, actually, do something, so to speak? So I do my testing and everything, and I get a really high score. And they're like, you can literally do whatever you want in the Army. It's going to be great. You're going to move through the ranks, and you're not going to have to do anything that's too, taxing, so to speak, because you're going to be one of the brains as opposed to one of the grunts. And so I'm sitting in the what's it's called a MEPS office, MEPS. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's where you actually sign your contract to go into the military. And they have like this big, impressive looking and important sounding contract for something in military intelligence. And at that exact moment, I'm literally sitting there in the MEPS office. There's an Air Force sergeant on the other side of me, and I'm sitting there, and my phone buzzes in my pocket, and it's a text message from my best friend since like the first grade, who had gone to the Army the year before. And I look at my phone, and he has no idea that I'm in the Army office at this point because he's like in Iraq or I guess he wouldn't have been in Iraq, but he's in the Army. And I look at my phone as like, join the airborne infantry. It's so high speed and fun and cool. And so I look up at this Air Force tech sergeant who's like, never mind that military intelligence stuff. I want to do airborne infantry. And he looks at me like, what? You can do whatever you want. You don't have to do that. And in my mind, I'm not picking up on the fact that he's saying, that's really hard and there's a lot of running and it's, that's like actual war shit. As opposed to, war gaming or whatever the hell I would have been doing in military intelligence. And I'm just like, nope. My buddy says that this is the thing that I should do, so I'm going to do that. And he's like, okay. So they switches, has to redo all that paperwork. And so I eventually find myself at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so now I'm in the Army. I'm like, holy crap. I remember when I got to Fort Benning, that very first night, like literally getting off the bus at the base, was the first time that I met somebody from the state of California. And I'm just like, oh, so many people here. This is so new. This is the first time I really met like a crop of new people. In college, you meet people from other places, but I didn't meet anybody in that first year of college from California. And I don't know, for some reason, it was just really significant to me that I met somebody from California. And what was going through my mind at that time was like, wow, this morning you were in California and I was in Pennsylvania, and now we're here. And then the next 10 days were like the most boring period of my life. It was almost entirely consistent of standing in line, either standing in formation, waiting for something to happen, or you're standing in line, waiting for somebody to give you another shot of something. And it was just standing. It was boring. It was just absolute freaking torture. And so after that first 10 days, you did all your paperwork, you got all your gear, you got everything ready to go. And now it's time to actually start basic training. And in that day, so where basic training had started, and the first like 45 to 46 seconds, I fell in a hole and I got a big crack in my shin. And I'm laying on the ground and there's pandemonium happening around me because the reason that I fell in the hole is because we got introduced to our drill sergeants, our captain, and we were going to go like actually start training. And the captain, Captain Hamilton, he gave this little speech about how everyone's, gave you praise and they're excited for joining the Army and you're brave and et cetera, except you haven't done fucking shit yet. You're worthless. You have 2 minutes to grab your gear and get on these buses. And so there were 220 of us, each with 3 pieces of luggage. We had the big, long Army duffel bag, you have a slightly smaller Army laundry bag, and then you had your personal bag, your backpack, your suitcase, whatever it is that you came to Fort Benning with. So there's 660 pieces of luggage, and we had 2 minutes to find our 3 pieces of luggage and get on the bus. And so I pick up what I to this day can't remember if it was actually my bag or if it was just a random bag that I picked up. But I picked it up and it was on top of a hole. I fell in the hole and just fucked me up. So I'm laying on the ground and I'm thinking back to that same book, Class 29 by John Collar wrote. And one of the things he said in that book was the key to surviving training is to never be first and never be last. Always stay in the middle of the pack and try as hard as you can to not get noticed. And so as I'm laying there, I'm like, this is literally the exact opposite of not getting noticed. Then I see a drill sergeant hat sort of slowly come into view and tells me, stand up, private. I stand up, and I'm very obviously favoring my hurt leg. He's like, oh, look, you're standing. Go get on the fucking bus. And I'm just like, what the fuck did I just get myself into? So I'm on the bus that drives around Fort Benning for a really long time to disorient us so that we can't run away. And then we eventually get to where we're supposed to train, Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 58th Infantry Regiment, and the 198th Infantry Brigade. Or maybe it's Brigade and Regiment, I don't remember anymore. In any event, so we're there, and I don't know if you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, but at least on November 24th, 2006, Full Metal Jacket was real fucking life. You know, 6 hours we spent in the company training area, push-ups, sit-ups, mountain climbers, jumping jacks, which for some reason the Army calls a side straddle hop. Just constant exercises. As as a group, we can't do anything right yet, and we get punished every time somebody does something wrong. So we spend the entire time doing these horrible, horrible, horrible exercises. And adrenaline's pumping, and in the back of my mind, like, fuck, this was dumb. What the fuck did I do? This was just the dumbest decision ever. But I'm doing it, and the adrenaline's pumping, and my boot is pretty tight, so it sort of held my shin together. And then the next morning, the senior drill sergeant, he wakes me up at 0400, and is like, hey, you need to go to sick call. And I'm like, I don't know what a sick call is, but why? He's like, your leg. It looks like you need to go to the doctor. Like, oh, okay. So the very first actual full day of basic training I missed because I'm at the fucking doctor. And they x-ray and so forth and so on. And they give me a bottle of Vicodin. And I'm like, okay, so what's up? And they're like, you have a high ankle sprain. Now, in my mind, I'm like, oh, sprained ankle. I'm not going to whine and complain about having a sprained ankle. I don't know, because I'm just a stupid kid, what a high ankle sprain actually means. And so instead of resting and doing things that you would do to treat a high ankle sprain, I instead did one station unit training for the infantry in the Army, which is obstacle courses, running, jumping, marching, all sorts of things that you should not be doing on a leg that is as fucked up as mine was. And so another thing that had recently entered my knowledge base at that time was the TV show House MD. And that show made it look like taking a bunch of Vicodin is a fun, cool thing to do. And I had a basically unlimited supply of Vicodin. So I would pop some Vicodin and I would go do Army shit. And I would get more Vicodin and more Vicodin and more Vicodin and more Vicodin. So eventually we get to the point, hilariously enough, St. Patrick's Day of 2007, basic training is over. And for whatever reason, I know what the reason is, my physical fitness was like this weird anomaly. So I would always do push-ups. That number always increased for my PT test. Sit-ups always increased for the PT test. But my run always decreased. And my drill sergeants were pissed. It's like, you fat, lazy piece of shit. Why don't you just run faster? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing all I can. And they are like, no, you're a lying, lazy piece of shit. you're just lazy and you don't want to run. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, it's like, yeah, I'm lazy and I don't want to run. So it doesn't click to me that I am just physically incapable of doing it. And so we get to the end of training. It's 17 weeks long. Because so Army basic training that then it was 9 weeks for the Army, so to speak, and then you would spend however long learning how to do your job. But for the infantry, it was just 17 straight weeks of just learn how to break things and kill people, basically. And so at the end of that, I'm supposed to go to airborne school. And before airborne school, they give you like a medical checkup, makeover, so forth and so on. And they're just like, fuck's wrong with your leg? Like, I don't know. Like, you can't do the airborne PT test because you're slow. And what's wrong with your leg? And so I end up actually getting competent medical treatment because as it turned out, I didn't have a high ankle sprain. I had a cracked shin. And so they sent me home for 30 days lessons leave. I got back to base and I was in the medical convalescence unit for like 3 months. And then I spent like 4 or 5, 6 months or something like that in the physical therapy unit, which is its own whole very long story. But eventually I am transferred from the physical therapy unit to the you're getting fired from the Army for being useless unit. And the way that came about was I had like my leg was completely effed, and so I had like a special permission slip basically from a colonel that said for this guy's PT test he doesn't have to run anymore. He only ever has to walk real fast. So instead of a 2 mile run in like 15 minutes or whatever, I had to walk a mile and a half in 27 minutes. And so the captain of that unit was like, okay, you go do your PT test, pass your PT test. And you can't jump out of airplanes anymore. You're not going to be in the infantry, but you can do something else. And so all I had to do is pass my PT test, and then I would go off to Texas or whatever to get trained at another Army job. I am. I do the PT test. I pass it with a walking like I'm supposed to, and I'm like, yeah, I get to leave. But the captain, Susan Altruitt, she was like, no, you can't walk. You have to run. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm like, first of all, I know that that's not true because I have this letter from the colonel. And I know you know that's not true because the senior sergeant spent the last 3 weeks under your command training me to pass this test. And so, what's up? Why are you targeting me? And so I failed the run test, but in failing the run test, I reopened the crack in my shin because I wasn't supposed to be running. And so I collapsed like a mile and a half in, and it really hurts, and everything sucks. And then she processes me for a Chapter 13 discharge, which is literally like, you are fired from the Army. And so I'm in the unit of shitbags who are getting fired from the Army. But what she didn't know is that I spent like the last 5 or 6 months doing this. So the sergeant, so there's captain, then there's a bunch of sergeants. And so a few of the sergeants were like in college, doing college credits or whatnot. And they had me doing their homework and tests like in the middle of the night. And so when they found out that the captain was trying to fuck me over, they interceded, went above her head, went to Lieutenant Colonel McIntyre, and then Colonel McIntyre sent me to an off-base hospital. The off-base hospital was like, yeah, his leg's broken again, you fucking idiots. And so I went from getting fired from the Army to retiring from the Army. And so now I am retired at the age of 22. And so I can't do the physical Army thing anymore, which is funny because I was like, haha, I said it was going to be assassin, but then I tried that and it didn't work. So I better finish college and go to law school. So that's how I got to law school.
Wow, man, that's an awesome story, man. I had never, yeah, but it sounds like perfect book, man. And then I think you need to make that into a movie. That's an awesome story, man.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your leg though.
I mean, most days it's worth it, but some days because when you do that, it's not just your leg. Your body compensates, and so my legs messed up, my back's messed up, my neck's messed up, my shoulders messed up. Everything fucking sucks. Um, and on top of that, I had the very fun adventure of going through Vicodin withdrawal. Um, but so as I look back, most days the benefits outweigh the pain, but sometimes they do not.
Gotcha. Gotcha, man. Man, let's yeah, let's so the trial law firm.
Yes.
So how did he come up with that name? So
Um,
that's the name of your law firm, right?
yes, that's the name of the
Yeah.
firm. I came up with the name by what is it that what is it that I want to do? Trials. Um, I don't like the pretentiousness of naming things after myself. I wanted it to be clear that I was in it for the fight as opposed to, you know, file a case, settle a case, make a bunch of money, file a case, settle a case, make a bunch of money, write a demand letter, settle a case, make a bunch of money. That bores me. I don't want to do that. I want to fight. And so I wanted to make it clear that I'm here for fighting. So trial is sort of the trial lawyers are the infantry of the legal profession. And so I wanted to make clear that I am here to break things and kill people, metaphorically speaking, in terms of law, as opposed to literally speaking, which is what I tried to do and got broken at. Yeah, that is like, what is it that we're here to do? We're here to try cases, so let's make it abundantly clear. Um, and that's how that came about.
So it took me quite a while before I figured out that trial lawyers are the infantry of the the justice system. How did you figure that out? Like when did you know that you wanted to try cases as opposed to what you described as far as just like uh, processing cases to settle?
So I knew that ever since high school, I would say. Just like anybody who, I watched Law and Order and so forth and so on. But some point in 10th grade, I watched this show, The Practice. Particularly, it was season two. There's an episode called The Trial, and it's followed up, there's an episode called The Trial, and then it's a two-parter. The second part is Cloudy with a Change of Membranes. So I'm watching this, and it's unlike Law and Order and all of the other law shows that were out at that point, or really at any point, that are all yay, police and prosecutors, yay. The practice was about criminal defense lawyers, and it was just like the whole show was about sort of like these in the trenches lawyers, actually trying cases and kicking ass at it. And there's a there's one episode. I want to say it's in season. It might be season one, but it might be early season two, where there's like the big, the rich corporate defense lawyer who is talking shit on these group of relatively young lawyers that just go in and try cases. And it's like he's trying to poach one of the younger lawyers to the big, corporate evil defense firm, and he gives a speech about how, you know, right now you're just at this firm where they're just sort of in the trenches, like grunts or whatever it is that he said. And so ever since then, I was like, oh yeah, grunts, like in the military, like they're the ones that actually do the war, so to speak. They're the infantry on the ground, and there's generals back in the big high offices and whatnot doing the boring transactional law type stuff. But this is where law really happens, is in the courtrooms. So I knew that for a really long time, and that was never a question for me.
Mm. And then so right out of law school, what did did you start your law firm right away or how
No. So my mom has been back when I was 8, when I was like, Mom, do we have a lawyer? The reason she said yes is because she worked at a law firm. And so when her boss got elected district attorney, she went to the district attorney's office and was there for like, I guess, like 30 years now or something crazy. So all through law school, I was sort of just slated and destined to become a prosecutor.
Ew.
Yeah, right? So when I graduated law school, I'm like, all right, yes. Actually, no, it's the second semester of my third year. The moot court coach was the head of the appeals unit for the district attorney's office here in Pittsburgh. And we were driving to Baltimore for a tournament. And he is talking about the starting salary for assistant district attorneys. It was $39,372. And just like, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. What? Really? And I'm just like, I feel like I want more money than that. And when I graduated, like there wasn't an opening right away. But the district, the actual elected district attorney, like knew me and my family forever. He was like, well, I mean, you can start whenever you want. And I'm just like, yeah, but do I want to start at all? Like, ew. Um, and so I ended up never going to the district attorney's office. I went to this employment law firm. I was there for like a year and a half. And then afterwards is when I started my office.
Gotcha. So in the employment office, were you doing trial work then, or more?
So I wasn't there long enough to get any of my actual cases to trial. That started to happen maybe 6 months after I left. But that office is really where I put into, so I had like, 150 some cases. It was one of those settlement mills. But I didn't treat it like that. I was like, all right, yeah, let's fuck some shit up. And so I ended up doing like a lot of the discovery stuff that I do now and sort of my general attitude and disdain for, you know, corporate lawyers. A lot of that came from dealing with them all of the time out of that office where it's like I would write a demand letter and they would blow it off. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll sue you then. I would sue them. And my bosses were always annoyed with me. It's like, why aren't you like settling cases and making us money? And just like, well, one, that sounds boring. I want to punch somebody in the mouth, and I can't do that until I file the lawsuit and we get to discovery, and then I can start punching people in the mouth. And so I was doing so much more like actual discovery than anybody else in the office. And so that really was the sort of sharpening of my claws and teeth to be able to do what I do now.
Mm, got it. And then you started your own law firm
Yes.
after that. So how? Yeah, can you walk us through the process there? A lot of people dream of starting their own law firm, right? I think it's one of the hardest things to do because in law school they don't teach us, how to run a business, and it's a big risk. So how did you kind of approach it, and like what was the impulse for you like to actually go for it?
So I found out that the office I was working for, there seemed like they were doing something shady, and I brought it to the managing partner's attention, and magically 2 days later they fired me. And I was like, I'm never going to work for somebody else ever again. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to have my own office then because I still want to be a lawyer. Um, and so, yeah, that's how it started. It wasn't anything planned. It literally was just me adapting to the situation in real time. Uh, so I had like the majority of my clients that I had at my old firm, they absolutely loved me because I didn't adhere to things like, you know, fake politeness or, the sort of decorum aspect of being a lawyer. I was just real with them and I let them be real with me. And so they they sort of, attached to that and latched onto that. And so when I left, a lot of them followed me, and I was like, all right, well, I have a bunch of clients. I guess I'd better start, working. And so I didn't have a plan to start a firm. I didn't have any sort of strategy to find clients other than a bunch of my old clients like, no, I still want him to be my lawyer. And it was just making it up as I went along. I am not a role model for starting a law firm. I literally, just like I talked to you about at the beginning, I just let things happen and I react to them, which is the absolute antithesis of smart businessing.
Gotcha. No, well, that's sometimes bad things are blessings in disguise. I mean, being fired from that job, kind of put you on track. And then so did you like rent office space right away? Did you get an assistant? Like how did you manage, the business side of it?
I got like a temporary office space or something along those lines. Um, I did not have an assistant or anything. Um, yeah, I just had like temporary office space that I worked out of, and I just, sort of did the things that I was already doing. Um, in terms of money, I had like one client who was started off as a disability discrimination case, and we got that settlement, and then he used that to seed a construction business. And so I was sort of like a quasi general counsel for him, which paid the bills. And otherwise, I was essentially just using that to fund cases to go to set them up for trial. And then, yeah, literally just things just all seem to happen in the correct sequence for it to work out. And it, has continued to do so for like 6 years now.
Nice. Nice. And what do you remember your first trial?
Yeah, I remember my first trial was a criminal case. It was the Commonwealth versus Middlebrooks. I it was a gun possession case, and this guy is in the parking lot of a grocery store trying to sell a freaking hand cannon to random people in the parking lot of a. And somebody calls 911. It's like, hey, there's a guy trying to sell a handgun at the parking lot of the grocery store. And the cops arrive, and they get out of their car and they pull their guns and they point it at my guy, and they're like, "Hey, you have a gun on you?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I have a gun on me." And they reach into his, it's cold outside. They reach in his coat and grab the gun. And then, predictably, they charge him for being a felon in possession of a gun because he had like 11 convictions already by that point. And so I run into him. So I'm at the jail visiting somebody that I was representing. And I'm like waiting for the elevator, and he's walking down the hallway. I was like, "Hey, are you a lawyer?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a lawyer. What's up?" He's like, "Hey, I need a lawyer." I was like, I bet you do, because you're in jail and you're not allowed to leave here, and I'm leaving." And so then he's like, "Yeah, please, come back and see me." And I'm like still super new, so I'm just like, "Okay, I guess I'll come back and see what's up with you." And then he, sort of tells me what happened, and I looked at the suppression transcript and the police reports and everything, and I'm just like, "Oh, this was they didn't do the suppression hearing right, and the gun itself should have been suppressed because the cops got out of the car and they only had an anonymous tip from 911, and there's a Supreme Court case, Florida versus JL, that says that an anonymous tip is not sufficient for reasonable suspicion. You have to have an independent verification of some criminal activity from the officer's firsthand perspective. There's an anonymous tip. So it was just an anonymous tip, and the cops got out of the car and they immediately drew their guns and pointed them at my guy. And so I'm sure most people probably don't know, which is why I teach civil rights law now. But when you point a gun at somebody and you tell them to stop and they stop, that is a seizure for Fourth Amendment purposes. But when you're pointing a gun at somebody, that is also, considered an arrest. And so, or considered seized, or considered, you're not free to leave because somebody's pointing a gun at you and telling you not to move. And so then they asked him, while pointing guns at him, do you have a gun on you? And they didn't Mirandize him before asking him that question. He said yes. And so that they reach in and find the gun. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, that's a pretty clear-cut suppression issue. And the lawyer before me didn't pick up on that. And so I took the case because I thought that was an issue that I could win it on. And so I asked the judge to reconsider suppression. He was like, no. I asked the judge to reopen the suppression so I could do more cross-examination. She said no. Then I filed like 19 motions in limine, and the judge was like, fuck this, and transferred the case to a different judge. And so my first trial was that case where I essentially, in the trial in front of the jury, I did the suppression hearing that I thought should have been done the first time. And then for my actual argument, for the actual jury part of it, the cops said that when they arrived, that my guy was talking to a different person who supposedly was selling the gun to, and they didn't get that person's name. There was like no actual proof that person ever existed. And so I was like, it wasn't my guy who had the gun. It was the other guy who had the gun. And then he ran away and dropped the gun. So the cops obviously picked up the gun, then blamed it on my guy because they were embarrassed because the real criminal got away. And the jury deliberated for 2 days, but eventually found my guy guilty. So we're at sentencing. And this is like a month or whatever later, we're at sentencing. And we have this special rule of criminal procedure in Pennsylvania State Court. I think it's, I don't remember the rule number anymore. It might be 704B. But at sentencing, you can make it has to be an oral. You're not allowed to do it in a written motion, but you can make an oral judgment for acquittal at sentencing. And so I did that. I based the argument on, because this is a new judge who didn't see the first suppression. He only saw the suppression that I would have done in the actual jury trial. So the judge who saw the trial was like, Your Honor, you saw the trial. You know that should have been suppressed. Please don't make me go through the whole appeals and all the other stuff. You can just, let him go right now. And he did. And so that was my first trial, where I lost the trial, but I won the procedural war.
Nice. Wow, man, that's an awesome first trial. Was that a jury trial?
Yeah, it was a jury trial.
Yeah.
And they convicted him, but after they convicted him, I got the judge to let him go.
Got it. Yep. And so as far as jury trials, so your firm is the trial law firm. Do you prefer jury trials? Just for people that may not be familiar with the legal system. Do you prefer?
So I prefer jury trials are more fun. The way my mind operates, I would probably have more technical success in bench trials because I see things like hyper logically, hyper procedurally, sort of picking up on jury emotions and their feelings and all that other stuff that's super, super, super important in jury trials. That takes a lot of extra cognitive effort on my end. And so it's easier for me to do bench trials because I could just nerd out at the judge and know that I'm right, as opposed to the sort of soft skill of, winning the technical case so that you don't lose on, a directed verdict, but also winning the heart and minds case with the jury where I want to kill and destroy everything all of the time. And that works in a bench trial in a way it does not work in a jury trial.
Mm. Totally. That's a good way to describe it. And we actually met at the Trial Lawyers College in
Right.
2018. We were classmates there. Um, has your philosophy changed at all since then, as far as jury trials versus bench trials?
So that's why I think jury trials are more fun. There's certainly a bigger potential payoff in a jury trial than there is in a bench trial. Um, but so I wouldn't say that my philosophy so much ever changed, but at the end of the day, my particular skill sets, like I can do jury trials, obviously, I do them constantly, but I am more comfortable in doing like complicated, novel, conceptual type legal arguments. Those are just things that judges care about more than juries. And those are the things that I personally find engaging and interesting. And so, like, I'm currently on a quest to destroy qualified immunity. And I know that I am correct about the argument. It's just a matter of finding a judge that will actually, say I win, as opposed to deferring to the Supreme Court and the circuit courts of appeal that all say qualified immunity exists when I now know it doesn't. So those are the kind of things that excite me about law. So it just had with Duran again oral argument in the Seventh Circuit about their interpretation of failure to intervene. I did uh, oral arguments in the Fifth Circuit that set new Fifth Circuit law about when officers can shoot dogs. Um, there's the case that we worked out of Philadelphia. I got the Third Circuit to say that we were right. We never should have lost that trial.
Yep.
Just the cerebral legal analysis is what my brain sort of just does automatically. I have to like burn calories thinking to do sort of the connection with a jury work, whereas
Gotcha.
sort of just do it naturally, particularly Duran Keller, which is why we really work well together because I do all of the nerdy stuff. And then generally I cross-examine the expert and or the defendant because juries sort of naturally dislike experts and defendants. And so I sort of have that built-in permission to be mean and destroy them. And then he, does the rest of that. And it's a fantastic dynamic.
Mm. Uh, Actually, one of the questions I sent you ahead of time was your approach to efficiency. What have you found to be like the best, you know, routines or things that have help you stay efficient?
So I don't have routines. Routines bore me. I think that sort of the overarching theme of my existence is I just don't worry about or care about things until they happen, and then when they happen, I just do them immediately. And Duran will tell you this. I am really, really, really fast, so I can write. I can write and file a full-on response within like a day or two of a motion to dismiss or a motion for summary judgment. And so my brute speed force, I think, makes it so that I don't have to figure out efficiency. I just do things fast.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I'm very, very inefficient. For instance, when I was on my way here, we were talking about my artisanal discovery requests. But the reason they're artisanal is because I rewrite them every single case. And I'm hyper particular too. So, if there's something that the defense, I have paragraph 74 of my complaint, and then something in paragraph 74 of the answer says something that's a little fishy, I'll write a discovery request, like particularly targeting that part of paragraph 74 of the answer. So I just, I don't copy paste any discovery request. I don't copy paste discovery object. I literally handwrite all of the objections that I make to incoming discovery. It is, it's very inefficient, but I do it so quickly that I don't find that I need to figure out a way to be efficient, at least not yet. Eventually, I figure at some point my mind and or body will slow down. And when that happens, I'll figure it out then. I'm not going to worry about it now.
So it sounds like your approach to efficiency is to just work your butt off and just brute force. It sounds like that's pretty much.
Yeah, it's brute force, but I feel like if I wasn't as fast as I am at it, and I didn't know it was fast until I started working with, other, particularly Duran, where he's like, what you just did in 3 hours would have taken me like 25 hours. Like, what? From my perspective, this is just normal. This is how long it takes to do a responsive response to a motion to dismiss or something. And it's like, I didn't know I was fast, but apparently I am fast. And so it's sort of using that. So I never felt the need to be more efficient, I guess, because I never really felt overwhelmed with anything because I would just do things really fast.
And as far as your current law firm, being a solo, what support staff or bookkeepers, what how many people do you have, and kind of what are their hours and roles, kind of in helping you.
So I have a sort of quasi assistant who will schedule things on my calendar and will answer phone calls and sort of give me a short rundown of whatever it was that the person on the phone wanted, because I don't care for talking on the phone. And I have her attached to all of my emails so that I don't have to sort of think about the boring routine minutia. I just sort of get it summarized, and then things just pop up on my calendar as she schedules them, and then I do them. So I have that person who's
How long has she been with you?
3-4 years, something like that.
Is she full time?
No. I don't have anybody that's full time. I have a law clerk who she was an intern, and then she graduated college and was doing a gap year, and I told her not to. And so I have her as a law clerk, and she'll help clients answer discovery and stuff, and sort of put that together for me to review before it goes out. And it does a lot like a paralegal, but since she wants to go to law school, and there is the sort of the misogynist trope that men are lawyers and women are paralegals, I wouldn't let her call herself a paralegal so that she didn't get bit in the behind by that trope. So I just call her a law clerk, but she does a lot of paralegal type stuff.
Mm.
And I have interns. So I'm a civil rights law professor at the University of Pittsburgh, and invariably every semester someone's like, "Oh, can we intern? Can we intern? Can we intern?" And so I have like two or three interns at any point from that, but otherwise, at the end of the day, it's just me. And then I have people that allow me to not have to do so many boring things about practicing law. And then, once a year, I just hand a bunch of stuff to my accountant, and he figures out my taxes, and he tells me whatever stupid check I have to write to the government, and I write that stupid check to the government, and try not to think about it, and move on with my day.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And backing up a little bit, just so we get because I think a lot of people struggle with, running a solo law firm. So, like, for example, the interns, like, what kind of work do they help you with? And do you find it's more kind of like as a favor to them, or are you able to actually get them to do work that's
uh,
effective?
so I remember when I was an intern, it was just like go get me coffee and like staple the stuff together, and my life was boring and sucked, and I didn't actually learn anything. So I make it a point to my interns go to depositions, they go to trials, they go to oral arguments, they go to mediations, and a lot of it for them is observing. Now, invariably, they do go get coffee and pick up lunch and other stuff like that. But I really treat them like they are very, 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 very baby lawyers. And not necessarily interns. So I don't get much in terms of help with work from them for the most part. Um, but I see it as my responsibility to make sure that they actually get exposed to the real practice of law and learn things to see if it's something they really want to do. So I would say no, they don't really help me get more work done. I more so help them figure out if they really want to do this work.
Uh, do you have them write memos and stuff?
So if there's let's say I get a 3 hour body cam video, I don't feel like watching that, so I tell them to watch it and tell me what happened. That's probably the most interny thing that I have them do. Like I don't like formatting, and there's you probably are seeing this now, but every freaking court has its own stupid formatting rules. And so they'll figure out the formatting for whatever court that I'm in. Like right now, here's a giant checklist that one of them wrote for figuring out how to appropriately do Seventh Circuit briefing as opposed to Third or Fifth or Ninth Circuit. Um, and so the format. So I'll write discovery requests just in a Word document, and then I'll send it to an intern. It's like format this to wherever jurisdiction we're in. And so they'll do that kind of stuff. But really, my interns are there to sort of observe cool stuff. And so I absolutely have them do that.
Cool. And then going back to your personal assistant, does she have a set schedule, or is it more kind of like as needed kind of thing?
It's very as needed. An email will come in and something needs scheduled, and magically it appears on my schedule.
Is she working from the office, or is she an independent contractor?
Yeah, she works at home.
And is she an employee or independent contractor?
So I am very afraid of the IRS and the federal government, and especially for all of the times that I shit on the Department of Justice or the ATF or something. So if everybody is a W-2, I make sure that everybody is always overpaid, and I always overpay my taxes just in case. So I don't want to figure out all the stuff that I would have to figure out in order to legally determine whether somebody's 1099 or not. And so I just make sure that everybody's a W-2, and however much they work is however much they work, and then they get paid however much it is that they get paid. And yeah, I am way afraid of some stupid paperwork error making me go to prison or something.
Guys. Well, so yeah, sticking with your personal assistant, it sounds like she is a vital part of your practice because she's kind of interacting with clients or potential clients. So how did you manage to train her up to be able to do that? That type, kind of be as needed and do that
Um,
kind of work.
um, and, so she, I don't know. I was just like, hey, answer the phone and see what this person wants, and then she tells me what they want. I can't think of anything like in particular that I trained her to do. It just seemed like natural, it was sort of natural common sense stuff. I just didn't feel like doing it.
Got it. Got it. Good. Good. Well, good job. That's having good people that do those things that seem small, but make a big difference. I think is a very, very important.
Oh, yeah, especially for me because I'm just so bored by routine, mundane tasks that I just otherwise wouldn't do them. Uh, so yeah, as a potential client will call, and if it if it doesn't get put on my calendar, I'll forget that they called because I don't really care about potential new clients. I care about the clients that I already have. Um, and yeah, I hate routine. And so anything that starts to feel repetitive, I just will stop doing.
Do you feel like um, taking care of your clients is a good way to advertise, or actually, I guess, do you do any other type of advertisement?
No, I don't even have a website anymore. People will just call me out of the blue, and if their case sounds interesting, then I'll take it. And if it doesn't sound interesting, but they can pay a very large retainer, then I'll take it. um, the only case that it wouldn't take is if somebody hurt a dog. Uh, it doesn't even have to be about it doesn't have to be a criminal defense case of animal abuse. Like, if in your past you hurt a dog, then I'm not going to help you. A couple of months ago, I had a attorney call me about this civil rights case where the cop just like ran over this guy with a truck, and it's on video, a very clear winning case. Liability could not be more clear. It's going to be a seven-figure case, but he had a warrant for animal abuse. I was like, no, I'm not helping. I just absolutely not. That is my bright line in the sand. Nothing if you. But otherwise, it's all about is it interesting to me, and then far less importantly, can you afford a large enough retainer? And if it's interesting, then unless it's a criminal case, obviously I'll do it on contingency. If it's not interesting, or if it's a criminal case, then I do it on retainer.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Any other uh, support people besides the your assistant, law clerk, interns?
So I have an answering service that so if somebody calls my firm, it'll go to my cell phone, but I almost never have the sound on my phone because I'll go into court and then my phone will ring in front of a jury or something, and it'll be super embarrassing. So I just never have the sound on my phone. um, but it's a 24/7 service that if I don't pick up the phone, then they pick up the phone and then they take a message or whatever, and they'll shoot me a text message and an email with a quick little message about what the phone call was. And then if it's like a judge calling, then the answering service will call me, and then it's not called ghosting, patching. They call it patching. They'll call me and patch the judge through my cell phone. So I'm always. I used to be terrible with phones because I would never answer them, and then I would forget that somebody. I wouldn't call them back. So with the answering service, I think that is probably more critical than anything for me. Is that answering service? It's called Answering Legal. They're pretty awesome and very reasonably priced.
Mm. I actually use Smith AI, but yours is answering legal.
Yeah. So it's a 24/7, like a real actual person answers the phone, then they'll take the message and they'll text me whatever the pertinent details are. Or like I said, if it's a judge or something, then they'll call me and then patch the judge, and so I can talk to the judge without the judge.
Cool.
Judges aren't supposed to, or at least they think they aren't supposed to wait. Sure. 3 months for a decision on a motion to dismiss, but that's neither here nor there.
So, as far as efficiency, as solo attorneys, uh, we actually got to team up on a couple cases.
Yep.
Do you do you use that as a form of kind of accountability and kind of using each other's complementing skills as far as being efficient, in the big picture?
I guess maybe in the big picture, yes, but I very rarely look at the big picture. If I like hanging out with you, then I want to do cases with you. Um, and I don't do it as a way for, like sort of using to, be more efficient or something. Um, I I do it to hang out with you. Work is a side benefit to that. Certainly, it helps if skills complement each other, and it makes it smoother. But I do it to, well, I guess 2 reasons. I guess I do kind of use you guys. Pennsylvania law sucks. I can't tell juries how much money they should give. I don't get to do voir dire. In criminal cases, I have to close and then the government closes and I don't get a rebuttal. So I have to sort of figure out what the government's going to say and then answer it preemptively in my closing. Uh, I hate practicing law in Pennsylvania. So I guess I use you guys to not have to do Pennsylvania law so much. But that is sort of like the only using I would consider. Otherwise, I just love hanging out with people, especially people that I like hanging out with. And if we get to do law stuff together, then that's just icing on the cake for me.
Heck yeah, I hear you. I'm getting better about that myself. I think that the trials that I've done the best in, I've teamed up with someone, and um, yeah, the ones where I just go in there solo, I normally don't do as well. I mean, it's always nice to have somebody to hang out, and I think two is normally better than one in most cases.
For sure, absolutely. And so, yeah, I try to be teamed up for as many things as possible. Like even the stuff that I have here in Pennsylvania, there's a couple of people close by, like Ohio or something, where I'm like, hey, let's do this case together. It'll be fun. And because it's really lonely being a solo, and there's a lot of stuff that like we know about our cases that we can't talk to anybody about. And so if you have a co-counsel, you can talk to them, I guess. So maybe that's a second subconscious use for the partnerings that I do all over the country. But yeah, it's nice having somebody to talk to about cases with otherwise privileged information that you can't share with anybody.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so 5 years from now it's gonna be 2030, man. I think by then we'll be on Mars and
Uh, yeah, I mean, if certain people get their way, they think we'll be on Mars, but
yeah.
like,
Well, well, yeah, I think maybe, so at least some robots or maybe some people, um, in 5 years, where will Mart be?
ideally, Mart will be on the beach, and that's just sort of where he exists. And then one, two, maybe three times a year, somebody from his TLC class will call and say, "Hey, come do this case with me." And Mart will say, "Okay, let's do it." And then he'll go to wherever you guys are and work that case and then return to the beach. That is
Mm,
intends to be hopefully sooner than 5 years, but 5 years, absolutely.
about 20.
20 years, still at the beach, still doing, one, two, maybe three cases a year with his buddies. And otherwise, just sort of relaxing with no responsibility and complete and total freedom. That
Mm,
is,
yeah, that's a solid 5 and 20 year plan, man. I think.
I don't care about making all of the money. I don't care about being like, legendary or having this, prestige. I just care about relaxing and not being uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form.
Mm. So then, I mean, trials are not comfortable normally. I mean, you have the prosecutors or the defense attorneys just doing anything they can to make it uncomfortable. So what keeps you going?
I like fighting. I think it's fun when the other side like puts up a good fight. And yeah, I think I am addicted to the battle. And so it's not stressful for me when, the government's being a dick or, corporate defense counsel is, doing corporate defense counsel shit because I very, very, very much enjoy um, just fighting back against what are ultimately just bullies. And so I don't need an external motivation to keep me going. That is all internal, I think.
Mm. And then you're a professor now, man. I didn't know that. How long have you been teaching?
Since the spring semester of 2023, maybe? Yeah, I think I started in spring of 23. So 23, 23, 24, 24. Yes, I think this is my fifth semester. Yeah, it's my fifth or
Cool.
sixth.
Cool, man. How do you like it? I've actually thought about. I think that I want to do that eventually.
So I like it a lot. I like it more in the spring than I do in the fall. I don't know if it's seasonal affective disorder or the spring kids are you know more into it than the fall kids. I don't know what it is. I really love it in the spring. I like it in the fall.
Do you have do you have to grade everything, or do you have like an assistant? How does that work?
Oh, well, uh, okay, so I think that grades are needless, arbitrary, forced measurement that doesn't actually give any useful information. So my class is entirely discussion based. We don't have a textbook. We barely have a syllabus. I mean, we really only have the syllabus because the administration said that I had to have a syllabus. Um, but everything is sort of like how we do voir dire. Everything is just sort of talking about various concepts of law. and then they figure it out on their own, and I sort of just moderate those discussions. So there's no PowerPoints, there's really no even lectures. I'll give them, a case or an article or something, because we're talking undergrads, not law students. I'll give them uh, I'll give them a case, and they'll read the case, and then we'll just sort of talk about the case. And then somewhere along the way, they figure out what the case means and how to use it. And I sort of guide them to that conclusion as opposed to telling them what the answer is so they can, regurgitate it to me later. My class essentially makes them figure it out on their own, and then I sort of tweak and modify it as needed so that it is correct. But I don't care about them being right. I care about them learning how to think and how to make logical inferences, and how to absorb the totality of the circumstances, and sort of think about facts and then apply those facts to the way that they think about law. um, and so for me, that's far more important than remembering that if you're a pretrial detainee, then you're put into a jail and the jail guard uses excessive force. That's 14th Amendment, not Fourth Amendment. I could not possibly care less about that. And I think it's just a waste of brain space for the vast majority of people to know that. So that's not the sort of stuff that I teach. It's more about thinking about scenarios that do or don't violate civil rights, and then trying to either prove or disprove those scenarios. That's how I approach the class. So at the end of the day, um, my students, their final exam is a half-hour one-on-one conversation with me where they tell me what grade they think they deserve, and then if they can justify it, that's the grade they get.
Wow, dude, that's awesome. That's a very I would have taken your class for sure. It's a very progressive a very progressive way to approach it. Um, are your does the school let you do that, or should we edit this out?
Um, I'm not sure if the school knows that that's what.
we, we can talk about that later.
um, so this past semester, actually, I think the school got some kind of win that I was super duper laissez-faire. I had a meeting between semesters with my supervisor. It was like, so you kind of need to like have like a real syllabus and like a rubric for grading. And so I kind of wrote one. No, I did write one. I wrote it, I think, is a pretty solid syllabus. Um, and so this semester, like earlier on in the semester, I made them like write me an essay. Um, and I graded that. And then I last week, I think they had a test last week. They all got A's on the test. I let them do it in groups, but they did the test sort of like how I run the class, or I just gave them 20 questions that I made up because I forgot we were supposed to have a test that week. And so I gave them the 20 questions. And then they got to, in their work groups, work out the answers to the test. And then they handed them in. I flipped through them. They're actually sitting on my desk in the other room right now. I flipped through them while we were still in the class, and then I picked highs and lows from the test. But it was clear from the test that they were thinking, they were starting to think the way that I need them to think to be successful, not just in a legal career, but like in anything that they do. A big part of my class is learning how to advocate for yourself, and so I was seeing enough of those of that progress from all of the papers that I sort of tweaked the things that needed to be tweaked. I pointed out stuff that was really good. I pointed out stuff that was not correct. so that they could change that. And then because of the work and effort that went into them answering that test, I gave them all A's for the test. It's like, yeah, this was really just a review session so that I can make sure you knew what the fuck you were talking about. Because if you leave my room and say something stupid, then I will be upset. So you need to, say things that are correct when you go out into the real world. And then we'll have a class exercise in a couple of weeks where I'll give them the direct, the cross, the redirect, and the recross of like an actual suppression hearing that I did. And then their goal is to, figure out whether the confession should be suppressed or not. And then they essentially write a court opinion as to whether to grant or deny suppression. And then their final exam is I sort of send them out into the quote unquote world where they find civil rights violations in TV shows or movies or books and then analyze them. And that is sort of like the last piece of written work that they'll do for the semester. And then in that half-hour meeting, with me, they talk about the work that they did. They talk about the stuff that they learned, and then they use their body of work from the semester as sort of their oral argument as to why they should get, an A or whatever it is that they ask for. And a lot of times, what happens in that final meeting is that the students will undersell themselves. And it's like, I think I should get a B plus. And I'm just like, well, that's weird because I feel like you should have gotten an A. Why did you sell yourself short? It's like, well, I was trying to be polite, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, never be polite. Go for what you think you deserve. And because if you don't ask for it, you're never going to get it. Now, in this situation, I'm going to give you the A because you're an undergrad and you earned the A. But that's not what it's going to be like for the rest of forever. You oftentimes will get what you ask for or worse. You will very rarely get better than what you asked for. So make sure you ask for what you want, not for, appearances or politeness or any of that stupid shit. So yeah, I mean, they do actual work, but they do, in large part, pick their own grade. Now, if I think somebody deserves a lower grade than what they think they should get, depending on how well they contributed throughout the semester, or something along those lines, I might give them the grade that they asked for as opposed to the grade that they quote unquote deserved. But even then, they deserve the grade I give them, even if it is the higher one, because it goes back to was there a time in class you said something that was fucking groundbreaking that you should get bumped up, where the actual numerical score isn't up to par, because I get a lot of discretion in grading, so I essentially do whatever I want. Yeah.
Gotcha. And if these students, let's assume that they were, just finished law school. They were thinking about opening their own law firm. Knowing what you know now, what would be your top two pieces of advice that you would give them as far as starting their own law firm?
So starting laws, I don't, even though I own a law firm, I know nothing and care nothing about the business of practicing law. So I could not possibly give advice there. What I can say is the same thing that was told to me as my 1L year. A Third Circuit judge was at my school giving some sort of speech or something. I don't remember exactly what he was talking about. But in the sort of reception part of that afterwards, I have no idea why he came up to me, but he did. And he invited me to lunch and was like, yeah, absolutely, let's go to lunch. So we go to lunch, we have lunch, and then he takes me back to his chambers, and we're walking down the hallway. It's the first time I've been in federal chambers, especially federal circuit chambers. They're huge and pretty and many, many rooms. So we're walking down this long hallway, and he stops at the door of one of his clerks, and it's like, this guy is just an absolute beast in procedure and evidence. And if you know evidence and procedure, you can beat anybody. And so that's really what I took to heart. And so I just learned. I read the rules of evidence. I read the rules of procedure. I read the commentary. I reread them. I think about them all of the time. Um, and that's really what gives me the knowledge base to be able to do the fun things that I do, is because, I can instantly know, at this point at least, if something is procedurally proper or not, particularly when it comes to discovery. And so that gives me a lot of power over, lawyers, who have been doing this for 35 years. Like, yeah, but on December 1st, 2015, the rule that you think changed, and here's how it works now. And yeah, so you're wrong, and I don't care how long you've been practicing law. Um, so the rules of evidence and procedure are really the fuel of law, or maybe the fuel lines. And if you know how to work those lines, then you can be successful no matter what you're doing. And that's, of course, for trial law. I don't know shit about transactional law, and I don't care about it.
Gotcha. That's yeah. That's really good advice. I completely agree. Um, and then currently, any legal issue that you're working on or case that you're working on that you're really excited about?
So I'm really excited about destroying qualified immunity. I have that brewing in, I think, 4 different district courts right now. I'm just waiting for them to procedurally get to the point where I can take that up to, I think there's one in the third, one in the ninth, and one in the fifth, or maybe 2 in the fifth, where I'm making these arguments. So the way it will work, depending on, what this, if it should get to the Supreme Court, based on, well, everything. Um, but either qualified immunity would be abolished, or Dobbs itself would be overturned, and Roe versus Wade would sort of come back as law. So I'm pretty excited about that. I am. That's probably, yeah. That's absolutely the thing that I'm most excited about at the time being. I have a couple of cases where there's a pretty interesting dynamic between, the rights at issue and the client, where I have a guy that actually just had his sentencing on, is that Friday? Yeah, I think it was. And he got 20 years in prison because he had like 8 machine guns and 15 pounds of heroin and a bunch of crack and so forth and so on. But there was just a grossly blatant Fourth Amendment violations, and then very unfortunate Sixth Amendment violations that occurred. And so I'm like, yeah, this sucks. You're going to go to prison now, but I'm, volunteering to do your 2255, because just like in the first trial I told you about, the suppression was completely botched. And so, like, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to get you out in like 2 years, because all of that shit should have been suppressed. And I don't care that he's an obvious drug trafficker. I don't care that he's probably killed people. I care about the fact that his constitutional rights were violated. And fuck if I'm not going to try to fix it and shove it up the asses of the people that screwed him over. Um, and, is he going to, get out of prison and be an angel? No, he's probably going to get out of prison and, sell more drugs. And I still don't care, because the Constitution is supposed to be bigger than any one defendant. And it's supposed to be unwilling to bend for any violation, no matter how much we dislike the person. And so that's something that I'm passionate about, that particular case. I think the one that I struggle with the most is, you know, when there's a hierarchy of, sort of honorableness among prisoners. And I think we all know what the very bottom of that hierarchy is. And I have a couple of clients at the very, very bottom of that hierarchy who got like literally almost murdered by guards at the jail. And it's like, you are like the worst level of if society is going to throw anyone to the wolves, it's going to be you, no question. And I don't really like you all that much either, because you're fucking gross. But at the same time, your constitutional rights were, horrifically violated. And I can't say that I care about constitutional rights if I don't care about yours too. And so, yeah, I'm going to fuck up that jail. And it was, so that one, I guess, was hardest for me to, internally decide to take. But once I took it, it is warpath all day long, baby. The only thing I won't do is help somebody that hurt a dog. And I have a couple of dog cases that I'm super passionate about, obviously, because I had a vet that killed a dog and tried to cover it up. I'm going to destroy her. And then I have a cop that killed a dog because he sucked at his job and he was trying to, intimidate people, and I going to destroy him as well. So yeah, I would say that's my gamut of, interesting cases.
Gotcha. Wow, man. Yeah, it sounds like you have some good ones. So for the qualified immunity, so those cases, you're waiting for those to kind of make their way to the appeals court and potentially Supreme Court. Is that what you're?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I talked about this on the TLC podcast a few months ago, but in the Ku Klux Klan Act, which is actually what Section 1983 is called, it's passed in 1871. And at that time, when a statute passes both houses of Congress and signed by the president, at that time, there was not the position of the U.S. Recorder. That didn't come until 1874. So until 1874, a law was passed, but there wasn't like a central repository where they were all written down. And then in 1874, when the U.S. Recorder's Office was created and tasked with, hey, all those laws that we passed, we should probably write them down all in one place. The federal recorder, at that point, when he got to Section 1983 of the Ku Klux Klan Act, he omitted a whole sentence from the statute that was passed by Congress and signed by the president. And ever since then, when courts were evaluating Section 1983, they weren't actually evaluating the law that was passed. They were evaluating what the recorder in 1874 wrote down incorrectly. And so in 1967, in the case of Pearson versus Ray, where the Supreme Court invented qualified immunity out of whole cloth, they said that, if Congress didn't intend for these immunities to apply, they would have said so. Strangely enough, the sentence that the federal recorder didn't write down in 1874 was a sentence that said, this applies to constitutional violations, notwithstanding any state laws, customs, blah, 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 to the contrary. And so in 1967, in Pearson, where the Supreme Court saying, well, if Congress didn't want something like qualified immunity, they would have said so. They were reading the wrong statute. They were reading what the recorder wrote in 1874, not what Congress passed and the president signed in 1871, which included what is now being called the notwithstanding clause. And so when you fast forward to 2020, whatever, when Dobbs came out, where Alito says that if a decision was egregiously incorrect at the time it was made, stare decisis doesn't apply anymore. When you consider how hypertextual the Supreme Court is, this Supreme Court should be fundamentally unable to um, reconcile the fact that the actual text of the real statute that the Congress passed and the president signed on its face forbids qualified immunity with the concept of qualified immunity without overturning Dobbs, and particularly the part of Dobbs that says if something is egregiously incorrect, then stare decisis doesn't save it, because the only thing that could possibly save qualified immunity once this issue probably gets before the court is stare decisis. But under Dobbs, stare decisis doesn't matter if it was super wrong, and under textualism, the was super wrong because it is the opposite of what the real statute actually said. So I'm super excited about that because I think that could change the game for so many people that are abused by the government, and the government just sort of gets away with it because you don't have clearly established law, which is defined as, basically the exact same thing happened before, and then somebody had the foresight to sue, and then they were able to win that lawsuit, and they were able to get a precedential decision that this was a violation of the Constitution. And unless that happens, there's no possible way for an officer to know that, his ridiculous actions violated the Constitution. And so we give them qualified immunity. It's stupid. It is nonsensical. It is illogical. It is, trying to get to the answer that society would like. Because when you think about it, a regular person who, just a regular law-abiding person, they never think to themselves, I'm going to be in a situation where the police are going to beat me up, because I'm never going to be in a situation where the police are going to care about what I do. So if somebody's getting beat up by the police, well, maybe they shouldn't have been criminals in the first place. But the Constitution exists not to protect law-abiding people. It really exists to protect criminals. It exists to protect the people that society doesn't care about or the people that society wants to hurt. And so where we have qualified immunity that protects the police abuse of these people that the Constitution is supposed to be protecting, that just really pisses me off. So I can't wait to destroy qualified immunity. I'm kind of annoyed by this because 2 years ago is the first time I made the argument. And it was here in Pittsburgh, and the judge just completely glossed over and ignored it. And I was like, so annoying. Because if qualified immunity is denied, then the officers have a right to an interlocutory appeal. So I thought I was going to get, fast tracked to the circuit, but the judge just completely ignored the argument. So there's a case that I think maybe a year ago out of the Southern District of Mississippi where my exact argument, complete with the whole Dobbs double bind, a district court in the Southern District of Mississippi bought the argument. And so it might go to the Supreme Court without me, but I definitely, because I checked this before I filed that response to qualified immunity in my case. I checked, and I was the first one to make the argument at the procedurally appropriate time in the country. But it looks like I probably won't be the one at the Supreme Court, depending on how that Mississippi case goes.
You reached out to them? To the attorneys that were in Mississippi?
No, I didn't reach out to them. I don't know if they made the argument because they found my argument, But I also don't care so much because as long as it gets done, that's what's important. I don't need to be the one to bring it home. I would like to be the one to bring it home, but I don't need to be the one that brings it home. So I don't care enough to call them and try to like steal their thunder.
Hmm. I was just thinking to just see if they need any support or just sometimes I think just having a
So
soundboard.
if I thought they missed something that I didn't, I would absolutely call them. But they hit all of the points that I would have made. So there's no, at least from my perspective, there would be no added benefit to me other than a benefit for me, which isn't a significant enough benefit for me to care.
Gotcha.
But if they, for instance, if they were just arguing the notwithstanding clause and they missed the Dobbs angle, then I would have called them and be like, "Hey, you can actually go a little further with this argument. Here's what I did. Let's do this Dobbs stuff." Uh, I would have done that, but they hit Dobbs, so I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, it's getting done."
Cool, man. Wow, that's a uh some very yeah, very necessary uh precedent that needs to happen. So I'm excited, man, to keep up, and whether it's you or those other folks, I agree. I think it needs to get done. But the talking about serious things though, the real serious question is, did you did you win against Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah, they settled. I got like $10,000 that I couldn't get until I was 18.
Oh, gotcha. Good, man. Dang, you were winning cases before you went to law school.
Yeah, that reminds me. My third year of law school, when I was certain I was going to graduate and be a prosecutor, I was externing at the DA's office, and so I oh, gross! I can't believe it. I was like actually a baby prosecutor for like 9 months in my third year of law school, and I had 46 cases. So that helped a lot in terms of being able to just jump right into court and start doing stuff. Was getting that actual experience in law school. Pennsylvania has a program where in your third year, you can get specially certified by the Supreme Court to practice as long as you have a babysitter. So I guess another advice piece would be if your state allows that, do that. Because then you get out of school with actual real experience, and that I think is invaluable.
Well, yeah, I know Washington has similar things called Rule 9, uh, where you can like actually try cases and do
Yeah,
depositions.
yeah,
Do you get to try cases?
yeah. I had 46 bench trials in my third year of law school.
I mean, yeah, that's really good advice. Just getting in the courtroom is vital.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
any last thoughts? Right? Anything you want to add?
Um, Play more pickleball, pet more dogs, and care about yourselves more than you care about the law.
Mm.
Not too much more, just a little bit more.
And actually, I forgot to ask. What was the last good concert you've been to?
Last good concert I've been to. Let's see. So I was at Death Clock a couple of maybe a year and a half. Yeah, I was at Death Clock a year and a half ago, right before I almost died from illness. Uh, Pretty sure that's the last concert I went to. I don't really like being in crowds. I
Mm.
and locally at least, concerts have been in the hockey arena as opposed to in the outdoor amphitheater, and I'm super claustrophobic, so I don't really go to concerts anymore. Um,
Mm.
but I have like concerts of myself, so every night I try to take a hour or so drive with no destination in mind, and just listen to music. That's probably the only routine like thing that I do.
Nice. Any good bands or artists that you'd recommend?
So I apparently don't care for new music since I don't know 2006. So I just listen to all of the things that I listened to in high school and college and the army. So Linkin Park, Slipknot, Disturbed, 3 Days Grace, Taproot, System of a Down, Rage Against the Machine, Incubus, um, Rough Riders, Eminem, D12. Basically, it's just a time capsule of the late 90s and early 2000s in my Apple Music.
Nice, man. That's awesome. Cool. Cool, man. Well, this was awesome. I maybe look forward to maybe doing a part two after you do qualified immunity um in front of the Supreme Court if those Mississippi attorneys don't get there first. And yeah, thanks for being on here, man.
Yeah, anytime, man. Keep in touch. We'll talk soon.